a web page once it becomes available. To the right of your screen, you should see a chat box. Please enter any questions or comments that you might have through that chat box. And towards the end of the session, we'll go through those and try to work those into the Q&A and discussion period. So who's joining us today? We have participation from 2 different countries. Most folks are in the Virginia area, and then also out towards Kansas. The presentations were recorded and posted onto a website. The folks that signed up through the webinar registration page should receive an email earlier this morning with a link to this page. On this page, on the slide right now, are some screenshots from that page. One of the resources are the recorded YouTube videos, pre-recorded presentations from today's speakers, but then also some additional materials, including page links to the database for state incentives for renewables and efficiency, the DESIRE database it's called, with pages specifically to the REAP program and the federal tax credit program related to solar systems, among other renewable energy technologies. The Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Energy, put together a Solarize guidebook with some project experiences from the Pacific Northwest to highlight some best practices for Solarize or solar co-op initiatives, and a link to that PDF is posted on that webpage. And also, some of the presentations refer to electricity costs. There's a link to a webpage from the Energy Information Administration focused on archived data for Virginia electricity prices across different sectors. So it's a good resource to refer to. Additionally, this webinar is going to focus on a project development model, not so much on solar energy conversion technologies themselves. If you are interested in more information on solar PV, solar photovoltaics, how those systems work, or even solar hot water, solar thermal systems, how those technologies work, on that same web page that you received a link to, we have about an hour-long recording each on the details of the basics of these different solar energy conversion technologies. So some good resources there for understanding the basics of how these systems work and how they can be configured for different applications. So this map here of the United States is based on content from one of our speakers today, Joy Loving, and where Solarize initiatives have occurred. And it's just about, it looks like roughly 2/3 of the U.S. has had some sort of Solarize initiative of some sort. And throughout Virginia also, again from the speaker today, Joy Loving, these Solarize initiatives have been in a variety of places in Virginia throughout the state. And we're going to learn about one of those experiences through the Central Valley, some initiatives that Joy Loving has been a part of. These initiatives in Virginia have been led by different groups, including Community Housing Partners down in the Christiansburg area, LEAP Virginia, Piedmont Environmental Council, and a group called Virginia Solar United Neighborhoods, Virginia Sun Initiative, among others. The speaker today, Joy Loving, one of the speakers today, will talk about her project experiences through 3 different solar co-ops, primarily in the central Shenandoah Valley, with collaboration from Virginia Sun Initiative, and she'll go into those details here in a bit. So we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, we're going to hear first from Solarize project experiences from Joy Loving, and then the second presentation will be from Laurette Tucker, focused on USDA Rural Development, the REAP program. Again, please type your questions, comments into the chat box, and we'll do our best to sort through those towards the end of the webinar here. Now, as I introduce Joy, let me give you a little bit more information about her background. Joy Loving is a retired Rockingham County resident, mother and grandmother who installed solar panels to produce her home's electricity in 2012. Since then, she has educated herself about the benefits of solar energy, as well as Virginia's laws and policy and its utilities' positions and actions. Working with the Virginia Sun, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to help communities go solar, in 2014, the Climate Action Alliance of the Valley, of which Joy is a member, sponsored Solarize Harrisonburg, and in 2015, Augusta Solar Co-op. Currently, Joy and the Climate Action Alliance of the Valley are working on Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op, again with the support of Virginia's Sun. Joy is a native Virginian and a graduate of Virginia Tech, earning a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in management information systems. Many years longer ago than she cares to remember. Her first association with Virginia Cooperative Extension was during her undergraduate days when she worked in the 4-H office in Blacksburg on campus. She is here today to provide her experience with the 3 local solar co-ops in which she has been involved. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Joy Loving to share some of her project experiences with these solar co-ops.
Hello. As you should have figured out by now, my name is Joy Loving, and while no expert on either solar co-ops or solar in general, I hope to give you some insights into how you might want to pursue a solar co-op. Co-ops, as they relate to energy, are not new. They go back, at least in the U.S., that is, to the 1930s, when those of us who live in the rural areas did not have electricity to the same extent that those in the city did. But we wanted it. And in a very determined way, communities all across the country pulled together and were able to make electricity a reality in the rural areas. You can see from this slide that this particular community was celebrating its successful venture into electricity. One of the legacies of that time were the electric co-ops, and those are still around today in the form of municipal electric commissions, such as the one in Harrisonburg and 7 other locations in the state, and also the rural electric cooperatives in the state. And there are several of those, including one in the Shenandoah Valley called Shenandoah Electric. Our electric utilities models developed from the time we first got electricity to the present day, but the model hasn't really changed too much since just after the rural electrification project. Although our model and infrastructure has stayed pretty much the same, it's grown, of course, but our usage of electricity and demand for it has gone up and up and up. We are using electricity in ways that those people who were thrilled to see electric lights come on back in the 30s could not really have imagined. Our power sources have also not been changed too much until lately. As John mentioned, in 2009, the Department of Energy, which coined the term Solarize, helped some Portland, Oregon residents establish the first Solarize program. That program was very, very successful, very much community-driven, and its origins were that the community wanted to do something together, and the Department of Energy helped them get there. The idea has caught on. Again, as John mentioned with his wonderful maps, the idea of a solar co-op is not an exception. It's all over the place. Many, many states, some which you might be surprised to see, have had at least one solar co-op or some similar kind of venture. What's been amazing to me in the time that I've been involved in co-ops, which started in the spring of 2014, Virginia locales have embraced the idea. So we have almost 30. And as you can see from this list and saw from John's map, they really truly are in all corners of the state. So here's a little bit about how a solar co-op works. I want to start by saying that a community doesn't necessarily mean a town or a city or a neighborhood. A community can be a collection of people or a collection of groups. If they want to go solar, then they can define themselves as a community and form a co-op. So you could have, for example, the small businesses of Dayton, Virginia, or churches located in Powhatan County. A community can be what we want it to be. It can be farmers in a county. In a co-op, the members can be as involved as they want to be. They can be involved in selecting the installer. They can be quite active in helping with organizational matters such as recruitment and publicity. Or they can simply register for the co-op, receive their individualized proposal and make their decision about going solar, and that can be the extent of their involvement. The co-op isn't a legal entity. It's basically a collection of people who, by deciding to go solar at the same time, can effectively leverage bulk buying power to get a discount. Generally speaking, at least in my experience, a co-op needs a sponsor. In the case of those in the central Shenandoah Valley, it was the Climate Action Alliance of the Valley, and a facilitator. And that facilitator is Virginia's son. As a co-op member, one receives an initial site assessment. I'm not saying roof assessment on purpose because many of us who have gone solar elected not to put it on our roof, but had a good south-facing site to use instead and elected to have a ground-mounted system. Assuming your site, whether it's a roof or a part of your land, passes the good sun test, you receive from the selected installer an individualized proposal. And that proposal comes from an installer whom volunteer co-op members select based on a competitive bid process. Lastly, co-op members can, if they choose, advocate for better solar policy. They can share successes with their friends and neighbors, and they can reach out to groups and other organizations and people that they know to make them aware of the co-op's operations and the benefits. We will not go through this in detail. This is the 9-step Virginia Sun Solar Co-op process. I've pretty much given you the details of it, and I'll just point out that the last 2 items are probably the happiest: installation, if you decide to sign a contract, and celebration, which happens after most of the installs have occurred. I want to point out again that the contract that a co-op member signs is between the co-op member and the installer. One can join the co-op, be guaranteed the group pricing, but ultimately decide not to go solar for a variety of reasons. And there's no obligation once you sign up until you sign a contract. There are multiple reasons for going solar, and I'm just going to briefly touch on these 6 that I have heard people say. I think probably the primary driver for a decision like this right now has been financial. People examine the cost of their electricity, examine what they believe would be their benefits from solar in terms of reducing their electricity, examining their payback period, and decide that since electricity costs are probably not dropping or not going to drop, that in the long term, solar makes sense for them financially. Many people have noted that solar has dropped in cost dramatically in the last, especially the last 10 years. Some people feel that they want to use solar because they want to use solar and they want to have the freedom to do that and believe they should have that freedom. Others think that a decentralized energy distribution system, that is to say one that's in your backyard and not necessarily at a power plant miles away, provides a greater source of energy security. Kind of coupled with that is also a view of some folks that our national security is a bit improved when we have decentralized electricity distribution. Those of us who feel that it's important for humans to be good stewards of the Creator's gift of the earth go solar in order to further that aim. And there are those who believe that decreasing one's personal carbon footprint is their way of making a contribution to improve the environment. No one in the co-op necessarily cares or even asks why one is going solar. It's a personal decision. You've already heard a little bit about REAP, which is the fourth item listed on that slide. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that first and foremost, through the end of 2016, is the 30% federal tax credit, which in addition to the co-op's discount, provides quite a financial incentive and reduces the payback period for those who want to go solar. For those people who choose not to go off the grid, in other words, they don't want to have battery storage to reserve the solar energy that they produce while the sun's shining for use later, there are programs called net metering that the utilities offer. You stay on the grid, you get full credit for everything that your system generates. Solar renewable energy credits are really a market-driven process in which you as a solar producer get credit for what you have produced, and you sell that credit on the market through a broker usually to organizations such as utilities in states that have a minimum requirement for renewable energy. So my solar renewable energy credits are sold in Pennsylvania, which does have a requirement for a minimum amount of renewable energy usage. Virginia does not have such a program. I will let Laurette talk about the REAP grants and loan guarantees, so I won't go into any more about that right now. The three logos you see on the left represent the two sponsoring organizations, Virginia Sun, Climate Action Alliance of the Valley, and the last logo is of the co-op that I'm currently involved with, Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op. The picture that you see is of the Massanutten Mountain Range, which is how this came to have its name, because this co-op is serving Rockingham County, Harrisonburg City, Page County, and Shenandoah County. When one thinks about going solar, one needs to understand a few things. It's a long-term investment, which is about the third or fourth thing I list there. Probably should have listed it first. The second thing you probably need to understand is that solar is priced by the watt, not by the solar panel, not by the square footage of your house. It's all about the price per watt, and that's kind of the unit cost, and enables some apples-to-apples comparison. The selected installer in a co-op offers a discounted standard price per watt. You can vary from that if you choose, for example, to use a different sort of inverter system, but otherwise, in putting together your tailored solution, the installer is going to use the standard equipment that he or she proposed in their successful bid. Keeping in mind, again, that you have the benefits of grants and tax credits. We'll let Laurette talk about that some more. And also keeping in mind that energy prices do not go down and are not likely to go down in the future. As I mentioned before, community can be whatever one wants it to be. Most often we list these four. One of the people who have signed up for the current co-op in our area is a small church. So you can have nonprofits, farmers, small business people, and certainly homeowners. These are the three Central Shenandoah Valley co-ops with which I've been involved. Solarize Harrisonburg ended in July with the last install. Solarize Augusta is a good example of how word of mouth and proximity to a co-op can cause another one to happen. Their installations are happening now. And finally, Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op. Since I prepared this slide, I've learned that we have about 114 residents signed up. Our last sign-up date is January 31st, 2016. So this co-op is still active and happening and eligible for new membership. It is the partnership of these organizations with the community in Solarize Harrisonburg, the Augusta Co-op, and now Massanutten that made these co-ops happen. Community Power Network is the umbrella organization of which Virginia Sun is an affiliate. It is a nonprofit founded in 2007 in the District of Columbia, thanks to the hard work of a resident there, a mom, who followed her son's advice and decided to help her community go solar. Climate Action Alliance of the Valley's mission is to educate people about what they can do to help mitigate the effects of climate change. Virginia Sun is the affiliate of Community Power Network that works in the state of Virginia. Here are the 6 things I think you need to think about before you form a co-op. You need to have a sponsoring organization that can give you assistance in terms of resources, not so much dollars necessarily, but certainly people resources. You need a local organizer, and that's been my role, who can hang on for the duration of the publicity and outreach period, which is the front end of the process. And you certainly need, in my opinion, a facilitator organization such as Virginia Sun or LEAP or Community Housing Partners to handle what is not a trivial amount of management and oversight, not to mention technical issues that arise. These 3 entities have to communicate well and often and decide whose responsibility it is when there's an action that's needed. You also need to ensure that you have a certain level of community interest before you launch. And often that's done by an informational public meeting just to see who believes that it's a good idea to form a co-op. I learned a few lessons in my time with the co-ops. As I mentioned, you really have to have a community who's willing to put up time and energy. Most of the people involved are volunteers, and I've learned that working with volunteers is a bit like herding cats. When you employ people and they work for you, it can be challenging to have people do what you say when you say. It's even more challenging when these people don't work for you. You need to understand who it is you're targeting demographically. You need to have a brand that speaks to the area you're covering or the nature of your co-op. And media is critically important. We learned as we went, and we have had the best media coverage in the 3rd co-op in this area. The larger the area, the trickier it is to have a successful co-op because word of mouth is very, very important. Although I had thought that in-person presentations to small groups would be a an excellent way to go. Overall, I think that larger public meetings are a better bet. Knowing who your facilitator is, in this case it was Virginia Sun, is very important. You need to know what they can do for you and what they can't do for you. And work very hard at publicizing your information sessions. It's not necessary for you to write any of this down. You can Google Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op and you can find both our website and our Facebook page. Solar Team at vasun.org is Virginia Sun's team of experts. If you have a technical question or just simply want to ask questions about co-ops in general, that's where you would write. My email address is on the right. I'm certainly happy to field questions. If I can't answer them, I will find somebody who can. Thank you.
Laurette Tucker is a rural business specialist and energy coordinator with U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Development Office. She's based in Farmville, Virginia. With that, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you. And I'd like to thank John for this opportunity to share with you the Rural Energy for America grant program, commonly referred to as REAP. As he stated, my name is Laurette Tucker, and I'm a rural business cooperative program specialist with USDA Rural Development. Now, the REAP program was originated with the 2002 Farmville and has been funded since then. The purpose of the program is to help ag producers, farmers, ranchers, and rural small businesses reduce their energy costs and consumption. This is primarily done through either renewable energy systems such as wind turbines, solar systems, geothermal systems, biomass systems, small hydro, just to name a few, or through energy efficiency improvement projects where we are actually, or the applicant is actually replacing something old and inefficient with something that's new and efficient. With the energy efficiency projects and applications, an energy audit is required. The next application deadline for this program will be May 2nd, 2016. As we know, there are thousands and thousands of ag producers and rural small businesses that serve rural America. So this program, through those two entities, is a way to assist with reducing our goals on energy, reducing our dependency on foreign energy sources, and bottom line, just reducing our energy usage. In this program, there are actually 3 eligible applicants. Your rural cooperatives are eligible also, but we tend to concentrate more on the ag producers and the rural small businesses as the eligible applicants. An agricultural producer is one that is going to derive at least 51% of their income from agricultural production, including crops, livestock, forestry operations, nurseries, aquaculture, dairy. That ag producer can be located anywhere in the state. On the other hand, a rural small business, which by definition must be located in an eligible rural area. An eligible rural area for purposes of this program is basically anywhere, but if it's a town or city and that town or city has more than 50,000 in population, it would not be eligible. There are also some areas surrounding your more urbanized areas that we would also consider ineligible. What is good, we have a website that you can go to and plug in the physical address of that project, and it will come back and let you know whether or not it's located in an eligible rural area. Also, a business must be considered small. How we determine small, we refer to the Small Business Administration table of size standards to make that determination. So, just to recap, ag producers, 51% of the income must come from agricultural production. They can be located anywhere in the state. A rural small business must be located in a rural area and must also be considered small. The eligible project costs in this program include equipment, the purchase and installation of the equipment. That equipment must be new, refurbished, or remanufactured. We cannot finance any used equipment. Post-application construction and facility improvements are also eligible. And post-application, that means that the project must not have begun before we have received an application. So those eligible costs after we received an application should be okay. Any type of professional service fees, permits, license fees, retrofitting are all eligible. Working capital is eligible, land acquisition is eligible, but it's only if the applicant is pursuing a guaranteed loan. Some of the ineligible project costs include residential energy projects. Now, we'll pause here to say that a residential facility is not eligible in the REAP program. However, our regulations have relaxed some, and when there is a situation where the residence is closely related to the business or to the ag production aspect and they share the same meter, there are some provisions in our regulation that would allow us to consider those projects now. Any type of farm tillage equipment, used vehicles not eligible in the program. Pre-application, here again, as I stated earlier, we must have a completed application in hand before you can actually begin the work. So anything that has taken place prior to us getting an application would not be eligible. If you need assistance and someone prepares your grant application, the cost for that preparer, not eligible. Lines of credit, lease payments, not eligible, and payments to the applicant, business owner, relative, also would not be eligible. Now, in the REAP program, there are basically three ways to get funded. Primarily what we see here in Virginia are grants. The requests come in for a grant that could pay up to 25% of the total eligible project cost. On the renewable energy side, you have a maximum grant request of $500,000. On the energy efficiency side, $250,000. Now, the grant will only pay up to 25%, so the 75% would actually come from that applicant. That can be in the form of a loan. It can be in the form of cash. It can be in the form of the guaranteed loan that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. The only type of matching that we do not entertain is another federal grant. So none of that 75% can be part or another federal grant. I think it's a good time to pause here maybe to talk a little bit about the federal tax credit. And the persons always ask, can they utilize the federal tax credit with REAP? And the answer is yes. We actually encourage persons putting in renewable energy systems to seek out the federal tax credit. The federal tax credit, however, cannot be included as part of your match. It's actually what the applicant would pursue after the project has been completed and is in service. So while you can't include that up front as part of your matching, we certainly encourage you to pursue that federal tax credit. The second type of assistance obtained through the REAP program is a guaranteed loan. As you can see, the guaranteed loan has much higher maximum loan amount. If the applicant pursues a guaranteed loan individually, then the guaranteed loan can pay up to 75%, or I should say our agency can guarantee a loan to a lender for up to 75% of those total project costs. So you must come to the table with a lender. Now, the third type of financing through this program, which I do not have a slide on, is when applicants wish to pursue the guaranteed loan and the grant. And we call that a combo. When the applicant does that, they are looking at a maximum of a 25% grant, but the guaranteed loan amount reduces, so we can only then guarantee up to 50% of the total project cost, leaving the applicant to provide the additional 25%. In the guaranteed loan program, we actually see our larger projects. You actually see the construction type projects, the land acquisition, the working capital. Basically, your traditional commercial business needs, with the exception of it being for a renewable energy project. Before I go into the slides of some of the projects that we have completed in the program, just want to let you know, I did not go into a lot of detail on the processing, but this is a competitive program. All applications come into us by the due date. We review them for completeness, we review them for eligibility, and then we award a score. We do receive an annual allocation in this program, and that amount varies from year to year, basically depending on what the national allocation is. And then we award based on the competitive score of the application. So we award from the highest scoring project down to the lowest until we run out of funds. And this is how the program has basically been set up, and that's what we've adhered to since its beginning. I do want to say that last year we were able to fund 25 projects in this program, 19 on the renewable energy side and 6 on the energy efficiency side. Of those 19 projects that we funded, 18 of them were actually solar projects, and they went to businesses as well as to ag producers. We did have one hydroelectric project out of the renewable energies, and then on the energy efficiency side, we, I believe, had a couple of poultry house upgrades, a grain dryer replacement, and an irrigation system. So looking at some of the pictures that we've done, and hopefully you can recognize some of these areas, Frangelu Farms installed a 40-kilowatt ground-mounted solar system. They're located in Mount Crawford, Virginia. Shepherd's Corner Farm, located up in Purcellville, Virginia, actually put in a roof-mounted, and that was a 12.4-kilowatt system. Mika Chalet, this is a mixed-use building located in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and there are several businesses located within this building, and they actually put in a 20-kilowatt roof-mounted solar system. In Brandy Station, Virginia, Glebe Farm, they actually replaced their grain dryer. They had an old, inefficient grain dryer, and we were able to assist them with putting in a new system. And up in the valley, this project was some years ago. Mr. Horning had a poultry house, and it was at considerable age on that poultry house. In his particular situation, we were able to, the grant was able to assist him with the replacement of that poultry house. That is not a type of project that we see often, but our regulations do allow us to put the money toward, the grant money, toward the construction of a new project, only when it has been determined that it's just financially inefficient to make improvements to that facility. The caveat is, though, the facility that's being constructed must be the exact same size as the old facility. So that ends my presentation, and I hope the program is actually of interest to you, and you can contact me with any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Laurette, thank you very much for that presentation on REAP. We're going to enter the Q&A and discussion portion of the webinar here. And before we get started on that, I'm going to open up a poll on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a series of questions. If you wouldn't mind taking a few moments during this Q&A portion just to respond to that to those questions. Your feedback really helps us improve our future programs. Let me go ahead and do that now. And Laurette, while I'm pulling that up, could you respond to one of the questions that we had in the chat box, and it's a read question.
Okay.
And I'll read it to you. So can a rural project developed, owned, and operated by a third-party developer selling the output of a renewable energy system under a long-term power purchase agreement qualify for a REAP grant? So a rural project developed, owned, and operated by a third-party developer selling the output of a renewable energy system under a long-term power purchase agreement qualify for a REAP grant?
I believe so, yes. And these projects in the REAP program, they can actually be used for the applicant's personal use, or they can be installed to sell the energy. And yes, a power purchase agreement would be required. So the answer, I would believe, would be yes.
Okay, great. And then we have a question here for Joy. Can a solar company, a company that performs the sales and installation of solar equipment, can they be a sponsor within a solar co-op or Solarize initiative? And I'll tack on to that. Could you go over a little bit more of the competitive bid process with these solar co-op models?
Sure. I think the answer to the first question is that if a solar company wanted to offer discounted pricing to their customers, they could engage in some sort of niche marketing if they wanted to target a specific area, or just sort of have a sale. I think conceptually a co-op process includes a competitive bid process, and it doesn't seem to me that if a solar company decided to sponsor one that there would be that element. So probably wouldn't meet the technical definition, but there's certainly nothing, no reason why a solar company couldn't decide to offer discounted pricing for a certain amount of time. I think we would call it a sale, solar sale. As for the competitive bid process, this is overseen by the facilitator. In the case of the three co-ops I've been involved in, it was Virginia Sun. Virginia Sun prepares the RFP, and the individual group leader like myself or the sponsoring organization or even co-op members who raise their hand and ask about it can influence the requirements that go into the RFP. In the case, say, of a rural area as compared to, say, a co-op in a highly urban area, you would need to make sure that ground-mounted systems are included in the rural area where they wouldn't be probably necessary in the urbanized area. The RFP is issued usually after there's what's called a critical mass of people signed up for the co-op. What that number is something that the facilitator decides, not the local leader like myself. I think that I have typically heard in the range of 40 to 50 people. So if that many people have expressed interest and have from satellite assessment good suitable sites for solar, then the RFP would be issued. I think there's usually about a 3-week response period. At the end of that period, the facilitator will have asked during that period for volunteers from among co-op members to become part of the selection committee. The facilitator organization does an analysis of the bids received, and points are given for various criteria that have been based in part on what co-op members said they were interested in vis-a-vis the installer. If they said low price matters, if they said U.S.-made equipment matters, if they said local installer matters, those are all weighted. And the array of information by installer, by bidding installer, is presented so that the committee members can make a comparison. In a meeting that usually takes 2 to 3 hours or so, the co-op members who are on the committee make a decision about who the selected installer is, and then the facilitator notifies all of the bidders as well as the selected installer.
Great, Joy. Thank you very much. And a couple of other questions for you regarding the Solarize co-op project model. Now, you had mentioned in your presentation that the co-ops are not a legal entity in the standard cooperative business definition. So what happens to a co-op once the project is complete and all the systems have been installed?
In effect, it's dissolved. You can choose to remain in communication with fellow co-op members if you know them, but it's not even necessary for you to know any co-op members in order to be a member. Really, it's about agreeing to purchase the solar within the time frame that the co-op is offering. That's really what membership means, and getting the pricing as a result of that, because you're leveraging bulk purchasing power.
And within your presentation, I believe you had indicated that co-op members are free to back out at any point up to prior to signing their individual contract with an installer.
Right, and they technically don't actually get out of the co-op directly. They just simply say, I'm no longer interested, don't consider me anymore. So yes, that can happen at any time until they sign on the dotted line with the actual legal contract that they sign with the installer.
Okay, okay. And one more question. Earlier in the presentations, we saw a map and a list of all of the Solarize type projects throughout the state of Virginia. But say that I'm watching this webinar and I'm in an area that either doesn't have an active Solarize project or that one that just closed out. How do you get started in looking to see if there's interest in your community for this type of thing? So you've been through 3 of these types of co-op Solarize initiatives. When you started early on, what were some of the initial steps that you took, or that you might recommend one taking now if they're just looking to kind of gauge interest for a Solarize effort in their neck of the woods?
I think it depends upon the extent of involvement that one wishes to have. If one is interested in going solar, not interested in being part of the organizing of a co-op, then you would just deal directly with installer or installers in your area and get some bids on your own. But if you wanted to become involved, then I would think you would want to talk to organizations in your area who might be willing to sponsor and thereby providing some people resources to help with such a project. Once you do that, then you would want to identify potential facilitators and talk to them, like Virginia Sun or LEAP or Community Housing Project, so that you can understand what their particular co-op model is and how they operate, what services they render, what their fee structure is, if any, and things like that, and how much they can bring to the table in terms of website, technical expertise, and making sure that they can carry a lot of the management of the co-op. Assuming that you can do all that, the last thing is to try and find someone who will drive the process of publicity and outreach in the community, however that's defined, for as long as it takes. And that's usually a 4 to 5 month period, because the publicity and outreach period ends with the sign-up date. So in the case of Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op, we began on August 26th, and my involvement will effectively end on the 31st of January when the sign-up period closes. So it has to be somebody who can stay in and devote a fair amount of their time and energy during that 4 to 5 month period. So I think that's kind of a picture. The real trick is gauging the interest of a larger community, and it's helpful if you, for example, if you belong to a community organization or a service organization or a church or any kind of group of people, I'd start there and see if there's anybody else interested besides yourself. And that can provide maybe a jumping off point.
Great, thank you. And one additional question for you here in the chat box. How does a solar company get on the RFP list?
Virginia Sun, if it's a Virginia Sun co-op, has a listserv, and you can access the listserv by going to vasun.org and signing up for it. On that listserv, you can learn a tremendous amount about solar in Virginia, because it's devoted to the subject of solar. Many installers are on it. You can get questions answered from a non-expert point of view, asking people questions, but you can also get information about the RFP. I assume the same would be true for LEAP and Community Housing Project, but you can literally write to these facilitator organizations and ask to be put on their installer list, or you can contact somebody like myself who you know is coordinating a co-op. I had a couple of installers do that, and I put them in touch with the Virginia Sun and asked Virginia Sun to add them so that they could get the RFP when it came out.
Great, and thank you very much, Joy. One last call for any questions or comments in the chat box, and while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and just show the web page where the pre-recorded version of these presentations are. It's Exploring Virginia-Based Solarize Project Models, and you should be seeing my screen now. And again, at the top are some resources that are referred to early on in the presentation, a database of state incentives for renewables and efficiency, which has project or program details both for a variety of rebate, tax credit, programs related to energy efficiency and renewables, particularly the REAP program that Laurette described, and then also this federal tax credit relating to a variety of systems, including solar PV. The Solarize Guidebook from the Department of Energy, a community guide to collective purchasing of residential PV systems, which is a great resource if you're interested in more information on these types of initiatives. And then the Energy Information Administration project or database of archived electricity prices. Joy's presentation is here posted to the YouTube, Solarize, Here Comes the Sun. The top blue link is a link to the PDF. And then the embedded YouTube is there with their contact information, and also a link to the Massanutten Regional Solar Co-op project page, their Facebook page. And then also here for Laurette's presentation on REAP, the top link to her PDF of her presentation, and then also a YouTube recording of her presentation. At the bottom is her contact information. She's based in Farmville, Virginia, her phone number, and then a link to the Rural Development web page. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I'd like to thank our two speakers, Joy Loving and Laurette Tucker. Thank you both for sharing your expertise on the Solarize initiatives in Virginia, your project experiences with those, Joy. And then Laurette, thank you so much for giving us a good overview on the REAP program.
You're welcome.
And thank you all to the many participants. I hope it was beneficial, and if you haven't yet, please do complete that poll. Your feedback is very helpful. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. So thank you all very much.